I don't think you would have seen all the development we have in Arlington County if we hadn't.
The arts are not only important to the Arlington community, it's important to human beings.
Signature Theater is really vital to this area. We bring over
Rosslyn has the
70,000
best location in the region. It's positioned next.
Smart growth is sort of a term of art, and it basically means let's first of all invest in our existing communities. It's about compact development, it's about walkable development, it's about providing more choices to Americans in terms of how they live and how they get around.
Arlington has done a very good job of focusing, very livable development within walking distance of the metro system. People can do their day-to-day shopping. They don't have to own a car. To me, that's the summary of smart growth.
That's really what it's about. It's about creating a livable community. And Arlington already had a head start on that. So it's been the ideal place to kind of work out this idea of building a livable community that you can walk places, that everything isn't so far away, that you're not completely dependent on automobile, that's built around public transportation.
The entire development plan along the metro system is really the essence of what smart growth is, that there should be denser development around your transportation nodes.
And that's really what smart growth is about. It's about giving Americans more choices in how they live, how they work, and how they get around.
I don't think you would have seen all the development we have in Arlington County if we hadn't had the metro system and the investment in the metro system.
When the Arlington County Board nearly 40 years ago approved the metro line coming through Arlington and had the orange and blue lines cross at Rosslyn, that was the beginning of smart growth.
In Arlington, they decided early on that they didn't want to just do a suburban rail system with parking lots and that kind of thing around it, but that they actually wanted to try and create a new downtown.
Well, we grew up in the 50s he actually grew up in the 40s.
And the 50s. Yeah.
And the 50s. So, but my memories of growing up in walking distance of Clarendon was that was the center of the commercial universe.
And Ballston called it Parkington, was the first really mall around here. It was in the early 50s. We saw them build that. And there was a Sears store where the education center is across the street here. And we saw them build that in the early 50s too. So before that, there was nothing.
Rosslyn actually began developing before there was a metro. So a lot of the planning that came in with metro, kind of came afterwards, whereas Ballston really didn't exist as the place we know it today. Back in the 1960s, there was a plan for the region that started at the federal level with interest in Congress and providing new transportation for the capital city itself. Virginia was not, it's not such an easy thing. It was not so clear that people wanted to participate. But in Arlington, folks knew they wanted to.
In the 1950s and 60s, Rosslyn started to develop as a commercial center. In the 60s and 70s, the first high-rises that were 12 and 14 stories high were built.
And so planners in the 60s and 70s here in Arlington, working with the community, came up with the idea that really led to this Rosslyn Ballston Corridor in particular, that said, instead of having the train go down the middle of the highway, and it was originally going to go down the middle of I-66 all the way through Arlington as it does in Fairfax, instead of doing that, why don't we put it underground and build around it, and in a tightly focused way, allow development to occur just very close to the station. We'll preserve 90% of the county the way it's been, but that 10% we're going to create a new downtown. It'll be a good place for people to go, to work, to live, but it'll also create a tax base. And that was the brilliant move by our predecessors that made possible the great community that we have today.
The second area to develop was Ballston. And I think in my mind, part of that was because of its proximity to I-66 as much as it was to the metro system. Because when development in the Rosslyn Ballston Corridor was starting, we were, metro was new and people weren't used to making investments yet on metro. So I think one of the reasons Ballston went was because of its proximity to I-66. Rosslyn, obviously, because of its proximity to downtown and its great views and things like that. The next station to really begin to see development was the courthouse. Virginia Square, in its sector plan, refers to Virginia Square being a primarily residential and educational center. And that is, in fact, what it's really become. There's a lot of high-rise residential there, more so than there is office. And then lastly, Clarendon finally began to develop probably in the late 80s and through the 90s, and in many ways I think it has become the most successful place.
And we had heard about Metro coming long before the reality happened. But in 1983, I remember sitting in a parking space on Fairfax Drive and watching the wrecking ball tear down whatever 6-story buildings were there, and with each, you sort of felt like, ooh, there goes a piece of my life, oh no. So the metro construction was very disruptive, but it wasn't the end of the world as some people had predicted. Oh, we'll never have life again as we know it. Western civilization will go into immediate spiral decline, and all those people there will come parking on our streets, and we'll have traffic day and night. And that reality hasn't happened.
We're from older buildings here in Clarendon, so it definitely keeps that historical aspect, in Arlington, especially in Clarendon, because we have been such a unique neighborhood for so many years. Clarendon has that kind of hometown feel, I think, and so we can be a little bit more unique than Rosslyn and Ballston, but we all try to work together because ultimately it's for the best of Arlington. Development has only improved the quality of life here in Arlington, and Clarendon is a great example of that because there's so many opportunities here. As people move here and they grow with it, they feel like it's just one of those little villages where it provides so many good things.
Partly it was intentional when the original planners laid out the 5 station areas from Rosslyn to Ballston, Rosslyn Courthouse, Clarendon, Virginia Square, and Ballston, and began developing the sector plans that go with each one of them. They consciously tried to make each one have its own character.
Ballston Partnership is an organization. It's a public-private partnership, the best way to put it, between the property owners working with the government, with the Arlington County government. It was formed when Ballston was not quite as developed as it is now. It's clean, it's safe, it's friendly. We've got great restaurants. We've got the metro right there. Very convenient. Parking's not a problem. We have the Kettler ice rink, which is a huge draw with the caps. We've got the mall, which is great to have there. They've got a wonderful mix of retailers, plus they have the downstairs, they have the eatery. And it's just a nice feel. I think the community works well together out in Ballston.
Most other problems, when you're prosperous, when things go well, those problems become smaller. There's less crime. There's all kinds of things that you can do better with when things go well. But housing is something that actually gets worse when times are better.
There's 2 things that Americans say they don't like typically. They don't like sprawl and they don't like density. Well, duh. If you don't like either one of those, how do we curb sprawl if we don't have density? Well, in my judgment, that you can have high density communities that people will pay for and be happy to live in if they're well designed. You can't just take more ugly look-alike houses and stick them closer together and expect people to like that. So density demands high quality design. It also, in my judgment, demands access to green space.
Our members believe that this is a great economic development project. It wasn't until the Rosslyn Sector Plan was approved in 1992 and the coordinated Rosslyn Redevelopment District was approved in 1996 that the kind of development that you see today began to take off.
It's going to have thousands of people coming to the area to work, and it'll also increase the occupancy rate in other buildings.
The planning has been so well done that all the people who live here are absorbed into the community, and they either park here or they don't park here. They're happily ensconced, and we have wonderful new commercial and opportunities.
The Rosslyn Ballston Corridor is obviously a great success. I mean, it's something that's been touted not only locally but nationally. The Environmental Protection Agency gives out annual awards for smart growth. The very first award they gave for overall excellence in smart growth was to Arlington for the Rosslyn Ballston Corridor.
People people around the world and around the country look at Arlington's success and come to look at what we've done here. So I think Arlingtonians should be proud of what has been created here.
And every community in America has a story to tell. Arlington has a rich story to tell, and so preserving those places that physically connect us to the past is really important to its well-being. And I think Arlington has done a fairly good job of that.
It hasn't really lost its small townness. I think that we have all the amenities and all the good spirit and all the civic activists and good churches and good civic associations. Anything, it's an upgrade.
Yeah.
And we use the metro and we use the stores and we use the streets, and so do our children, and those who don't live in Arlington wish they did, and so we don't see any...
Yeah, the metro is a fantastic addition because all those people would be on the street and people still resist carpools and all. I mean, a lot of people do. So you'd have an awful lot more cars.
And I think that one of the things that Arlington has done is in concentrating development around the metros, whether it's Clarington or Courthouse or Ballston, is to create a real urban village. And these are places that are pretty high density, but they have a mix of use. They have parks. They're walkable. You can walk from your home to a store, for example, or to your business. Arlington is also the home of several universities. And all of these are accessible, as I said before, on foot or on bicycle or on transit, in addition to being able to drive there. So I think that they've tried to, once again, combine the best of both worlds.
Arlington County is the place to work and play and live. There are a couple new projects that I think will happen in the next 3 to 5 years, but we're just waiting to see what happens.
Oh, it's bright. It's a great future. It's a livable community. It's sustainable. It is a great location for both businesses and residents, and there's nothing but a bright future.
Our mission, we say, is we use the arts as a tool to transform lives, build community, and make Arlington a great place to live, work, and visit.
The arts enriches. They enrich our lives. And for many cities, and hopefully increasingly for Arlington, public art helps to define a community.
The arts are not only important to the Arlington community, it's important to human beings. All human beings are attracted to art. We're attracted to aesthetics and beauty. It is a part of our nature.
I think another interesting thing about art is I think it brings artists into a community.
The arts create a conversation, and by seeing a live performance on stage, you're really allowing yourself to open yourself to a new world, to explore your own opinions intellectually as well as emotionally.
To me, artists are able to connect to their community in ways maybe others can't or don't. Art speaks across boundaries of language, culture, ethnicity.
And I did not feel that they were reflective of Arlington, and they certainly weren't meeting the needs and interests of a lot of our community, particularly the newer immigrating groups that were coming into the county. So we wanted to have an arts program that would be of more interest to all the people in the community, not just a certain segment of the community. So we looked at all of the different I think, assets and things that we had in terms of resources and tried to rethink the way we might use that to attract more artists and arts organizations into the county. And we started the Arts Incubator Program, which is a way of providing lots of different support that I've been talking about.
Arlington's the kind of place that's very transient. People move here, stay for a few years, move on to other parts of the world. That means there's always a new crop of artists, a new crop of creative people who want to develop work or present work.
In 1986, when I came, we had about 10 arts groups that were providing 198 events a year. And today we have about 50 arts groups that are doing 1,500 arts events a year. So obviously there's a tremendous amount of difference.
Got exactly what you wanted all of the time. You know we never had to work, only had to...
Cultural Affairs Division, that is our role. There's a staff of 22 people. And we work with the grants program to support artists and arts organizations. We work to facilitate performances through the Gunston Arts Center, through the theater at Thomas Jefferson, through the Rosslyn Spectrum. So we provide venue, we provide some financial support, we provide a lot of technical and logistic assistance.
Charge to the Commission is to oversee the county's support for arts organizations, for public art on our streets and sidewalks, and then also to advocate for the arts and be grants to organizations or individual artists, but it also can be technical assistance.
Most of their, and not just in terms of the county, because of financial difficulties, had to make some budget cuts across the board, and obviously the arts were one of the programs that were cut as a result of that. I think the county was actually very modest in the cuts that they made. In addition to that, though, all of our arts groups, the state made grant cuts. So all of the groups got less money from the state than they had before. And then businesses, corporations, individuals, all of them aren't going to arts activities quite as much, so they're not buying as many tickets. And they also, individual giving has been cut. So all in all of the arts right now are having a hard time keeping up. It's always difficult for the arts. They're always having to fundraise and always in a money crunch. But right now is particularly difficult.
The State Commission for the Arts, Virginia Commission for the Arts, was on the chopping block this year and saw significant cuts, close to 50% when you look at it over the past 2 fiscal years.
I think that some people think that the arts are just an activity that people go to and that they're supported by tickets, and so you really don't have to fund the arts. Most artists and arts organizations are very, very poor. And I think the best way to talk about it is we might give, when we give money to an arts group or help, we give them maybe 5 or 6% of their budget. That helps them develop a little bit, and then they have to go out to lots of other places and raise more money. So for our, let's say, maybe we give somebody $10,000. Well, their budget could actually be $500,000. But without our $10,000 in the beginning to help them grow, they might not even be here. Such as Signature. Signature started in our incubator program, and they had a very tiny budget. And look at them today, they're a multi-million-dollar theater company.
Signature Theater is really vital to this area. We bring over 70,000 patrons a year to our facility, and as such, the surrounding areas benefit from the patronage here.
Only love and nothing more, is that just revolting or greasy and gritty? It looks like it's molting and tastes like, well, pity a woman alone.
The arts do bring back to the community both quality of life enhancements, sense of community, as well as dollars. So a different study that was done nationally, and it was released in 2007. It was called the Arts and Economic Prosperity Study. And what they found nationally was that nonprofit arts and cultural organizations generate about $166 billion worth of spending in the economy, and support, I think it was about 5 million jobs. What they also found, again on average nationally, was that for about every dollar that either the federal government, the state governments, or the local governments put into the arts, whether it's in terms of grants or other kinds of technical assistance for arts organizations, they got a return of about $7. in terms of tax revenues.
Having the Signatures Theater across the street was a wonderful addition. And not only are we able to use the benefits of having the patrons that come to the theater come and have dinner here before and after a show, but we also do some joint programming with them. For example, we've done cast parties, we've done some catering events for them.
We have patrons who come all the way from Japan, from South Africa, so we've really helped put Arlington on the map and helped drive the economy here.
We looked at the impact at Arena Stage, which was temporarily in Crystal City, and Signature Theater in Shirlington, on the surrounding restaurants. And what we found was that over the course of a year, I think there were about 700 performances between the two theater groups that were given. About 60% of the patrons that came to those performances were from outside the county. And over 50% of them went to a restaurant for dinner or drinks, either before or after the performances. And based on, I think it was about 400 patron surveys, and then also checking with the surrounding restaurants, we found that very conservatively, if you estimated that only 50% of the seats were filled for those performances on average, that the patrons that came to the theaters drove over $3.5 million in restaurant sales annually.
So I think Rosslyn could really use the same kind of boost that Shirlington has had. It's a wonderful business district, but I think it could really benefit from that kind of rich cultural experience.
Artisphere is actually a campus, if you will. It actually consists of two buildings. One is the current Spectrum Theater, and the other is the former museum space. And they're located right across the street from each other in Rosslyn, off of Wilson Boulevard. The space at the museum became available to the county as part of a site plan review coming from Monday Properties, which is a local developer, who gave 50,000 square feet of space in order to build another building in Rosslyn. The county approved last year to renovate that space, which was built for a museum, for the museum, into this new cultural center.
Rosslyn is on a real strong resurgence, and the Rosslyn Business Improvement District and the Rosslyn Renaissance have been working hard for a long time to make Rosslyn a dynamic community. I think Artisphere is a real critical component of that.
It's a great, I think, initiative by the county. I think it speaks volumes to the commitment of the county to the arts. I think that's very important. I think Arlington has distinguished itself to be kind of an arts-friendly county. They put their money where the mouth is.
Well, the Artisphere will have about a $3 million budget once it's up and fully operational, we think, at least in the first year or two. Part of that funding comes from contributions that the county has made, including transferring some staff from the Cultural Affairs Division over to the Artisphere, as well as support coming from the local business sector. The Rosslyn Business Improvement District last year pledged over $1 million in support of the Artisphere in terms of helping it get started.
It's interesting. I don't know whether the Artmosphere will spawn a group of businesses that will find it interesting and beneficial for them to open around there, because people will be coming all the time to Artmosphere. I'm not really sure. That's yet to be seen.
We will be watching very carefully as they make some decisions in the upcoming months, hiring staff, filling out some key positions, including marketing. And we will desire, to the greatest possible extent, to piggyback, as it were, and leverage what resources they're putting behind Artisphere's opening.
Well, I think it's going to have two layers of effect. It will certainly provide a venue for one group of artists, performers, visual artists. They actually will have another place to ply their craft, to show what they do well. On a deeper level, I hope it gets us to that sort of living room concept, that town square concept, the idea that there's a forum where artists, arts patrons, those passionate about the subject, can come together and maybe dream up new ideas. Study that's beginning right now this summer about the arts in Arlington over the next 20 years, and I think that's going to be really informative. We're all going to learn a lot about current impressions and people's ambitions and the steps they're taking right now to ensure that they have some artistic license and artistic process and availability 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road.
I think that the arts can help people understand each other. One of the most important things, I think, is that I think the arts are a tool to help people change and to make positive change in a community. I think the arts present issues and ideas, and people look at that or might go see a play that deals with an important issue we're all facing today. And I think it makes people think about that and maybe makes them even address the way they feel about an issue.
You know, art is really the binding glue for a culture. When human beings define the beginning of humanity, we define it by the art we see on the caves, on the cave walls. That's when we know there were human beings here. That's what distinguishes us between beasts, between animals. It's our ability to create art and create beauty.